Okay, you are learning about excretory system in human beings. Okay, excretion means separation and removal of the waste from the bodies. Kidneys are the vital organs which involve in the excretion. So in previous class we learned about the structure of kidneys. What are the functional units of kidneys? Nephrons. Okay. You learn about the structure of nephron. There are two parts: Malpighian body and tubular part. In Malpighian body, Bowman's capsule and a glomerulus are present. And in tubules, proximal convoluted tubule, loop of Henle, distal convoluted tubule are there. And the distal convoluted tubule connect to the collecting duct. So that is the structure. So urine formation takes place in the kidneys. Urine formation. Urine means whenever the nitrogenous waste is separated from the blood, the urine is formed. So in which part the urine formation takes place in the nephrons? Glomerulus. This is the glomerulus. Okay. So which arteriole form the glomerulus? Afferent arteriole. Afferent arteriole form the glomerulus and it leave the Bowman's capsule as efferent arteriole. The efferent arteriole continues and form a peritubular network around the tubules. Peritubular network. This arteriole finally connect to the venous system. Renal venules, and the renal venules form the renal vein. So in the glomerulus, through the ultrafiltration, urine formation takes place. So in this mechanism, 4 steps you can see. First one, glomerular filtration. Next, tubular reabsorption. Third one, tubular secretion. And the last one, concentration of urine. So first of all, glomerular filtration. Glomerular filtration. Ultrafiltration takes place. That means you see this Bowman's capsule. The afferent arteriole bring the blood into the glomerulus. The blood consists of nitrogenous waste. So here what should happen? The nitrogenous waste present in the blood should separate it. Okay? So for that separation, pressure should be applied on the blood. How the pressure is applied? The narrowness of efferent arteriole. Okay, the narrowness of efferent arteriole apply the pressure on the blood. So due to the pressure, all the nitrogenous waste and along the other useful material is separated from blood. Solid materials are not separated. That means the blood cells, RBC, platelets, white blood cells, these are not separated. Okay. So this is called ultrafiltration method. So due to this ultrafiltration method, as I said, some nutrient molecules, water and waste molecules, that means nitrogenous waste, these are all separated. They enter into the Bowman's capsule. You know, the walls of the Bowman's capsules are made of a single layer of epithelial cells. What we call the epithelial cells? Podocyte cells. Okay, between the podocyte cells, some gaps are there. Some gaps. Through the gaps, the separated material enter into the tubules. Okay, the material that separated from the blood through glomerular filtration is called primary urine. This is called primary urine. So what do the primary urine consist? Along with waste molecules, it also consists of nutrient molecules. Okay, that means useful molecules, and a lot water also. So that is the primary urine. Now the primary urine is transferred to the next part of the nephron from a Bowman's capsule. What is the next part?
PCT.
Yeah, PCT. PCT means proximal convoluted tubule. So whenever the primary urine is traveling through the proximal convoluted tubule, second stage takes place. That is tubular reabsorption. Tubular reabsorption. That means why should the reabsorption takes place? Because the primary urine consists some useful nutrient molecules and water. If they are removed through urine, we can't survive. Okay. So in this tubular reabsorption, the important molecules absorbed by the peritubular network from the PCT. So usually what do they absorb? Water. In the PCT region, 75% water is reabsorbed. 75% water. Along with water, some important ions, calcium, magnesium and sodium ions also reabsorbed into the blood. Vitamin C is reabsorbed. Proteins reabsorbed. Glucose. So these are all important molecules, ions, vitamins and water are reabsorbed in the PCT region. Now remaining primary urine enter the loop of Henle. This U-shaped narrow tube is called loop of Henle. Here 10% of water is reabsorbed into peritubular network. Peritubular network means blood capillaries formed by different arteries. 10% water is reabsorbed. So here in every area, in every step, concentration of urea is changing. Concentration means the chemical nature, whether it is acidic or basic. It's changes. Chemical nature means pH. Okay, pH of urine changes at every stage. Next, now we enter into the next part. What is this? DCT, distal convoluted tubule. In the DCT, third stage takes place. That is tubular secretion. Tubular secretion means it is another type of filtration method. Already in the Bowman's capsule, filtration occurs, right? The waste material is separated from glomerulus. In the tubular secretion also, the waste material is secreted from peritubular network to DCT. So what do they are separated means? Nitrogenous waste like urea, uric acid, creatinine, and the excess ions includes hydrogen ions, calcium ions and sodium ions. So they are also excreted. So nitrogenous waste like urea, uric acid and creatinine and some ions. So these are all removed from the blood and they secreted from peritubular network to distal convoluted tubule. So by which process this reabsorption and secretion takes place? How do the material move from tubule to peritubular network? Osmosis process. Okay, the entire process of urine takes place through osmoregulation process. That means the material move from high concentration to low concentration through the semi-permeable membrane. But because the tubules, whether it is peritubular network or renal tubules, they are lined with a single layer of epithelial tissue that act as a semi-permeable membrane. So through osmosis process, this reabsorption and secretion takes place. So if there is any excess water, that is also removed from the blood in PCT region. The secretion takes place in PCT also, but very little bit. Most of the secretion occur in DCT. In the DCT also, if you observe, absorption occur, but most absorption occur in a PCT region. Very less absorption occur in a DCT region. See here in the from DCT, or distal convoluted tubule, the water is reabsorbing. Now later finally the urine enter into the, what is this? Collecting duct. In the collecting duct, next stage takes place, that is regulation of concentration of the urine. That means regulation of pH of the urine. Here one important hormone involved to control the regulation of concentration of urine. That hormone name is vasopressin. What is this hormone? Vasopressin. The vasopressin hormone is released from hypothalamus, which is present in the brain. Hypothalamus. Through the pituitary gland, hypothalamus releases vasopressin. It is transferred to the kidneys through the blood. So, what is the role of vasopressin means? It to regulate the concentration of urine. Okay. That means if you take the excess, if you drink excess water, or if you take food, water-rich foods, your body will get excess water. Okay, that has to be removed from body. Otherwise, imbalance takes place. If you drink excess water, vasopressin do not release. So when do vasopressin release? To increase the concentration of urine, to produce the concentrated urine. Concentrated urine. Concentrated urine means the urine consists of less amount of water. If you drink excess water, vasopressin do not release, so excess water is removed through urine. But if you have the water inadequacy in the blood, that means you have the dehydration. If there is less water in the blood, the vasopressin release and produce a concentrated urine. That means the urine consists of less water. Okay. If the vasopressin do not release, what will happen? The water will be removed from the body. Okay. Due to some diseases, some problems to the hypothalamus, in some persons, vasopressin do not release. In that person, the water will be lost to the urine. They go to urine very frequently. Urine is very dilute. That disease is called diabetes insipidus. What is that one?
Diabetes insipidus.
Yeah, diabetes insipidus. Sugar disease is different. Okay, if the urine consists sugar, that is diabetes mellitus. Here, in the diabetes insipidus, the urine consists of water. In diabetes mellitus, urine consists of sugar. That is the difference. Okay? So vasopressin released to produce the concentrated urine. Okay. Next, what is the next step after formation of urine? These collecting ducts. From the collecting ducts, now urine enters to the next part, that is the ureter. Ureter. In illness of kidney, you learn the pyramid-shaped calyces are formed by collecting ducts. All the collecting ducts opens into the pelvis region. They open into pelvis region. From the pelvis, urine enter into the fine long tube. That is the ureter. What is that one?
Ureter.
Okay. Ureter is a long tube. It's made of muscles, usually whitish in color. Usually is 10 centimeters in length. 10 centimeters. So urine travel from kidneys to the urinary bladder to the ureter. So how do it travel? Through the peristalsis process. Peristalsis. We learn in digestion process. Okay. Peristalsis. In peristalsis, what happens? The muscles in the walls contracts and relaxes. Due to the wave-like movement takes place, it pushes the material in downward direction. So through the peristalsis, the urine moves to the urinary bladder. Okay, urinary bladder is in pear shape. It's a muscular structure, elastic in nature. The walls are made of elastic muscles. That's why bladder can expand. So usually the urinary bladder capacity is 300 to 800 ml urine. It can store up to 800 ml urine. So it can expand. So next part is urethra. So the urine pass out from body to the urethra. Urethra connect to the urinary bladder. So where the urethra connect to the urinary bladder, there are two sphincter muscles are there. Sphincter muscles. We learn in digestive system. Between the stomach and duodenum, pyloric sphincter is there. It open and close to regulate the movement of food. Just like that, the sphincter muscles present between urethra and bladder regulate the movement of urine. Two sphincter muscles are there. Here about urethra you have to learn one point. The length of urethra is different in male and female. In female, the urethra is very short, up to 4 centimeters. Moreover, the urethra separately opens in female. But in male, if you observe, the urethra is long, up to 20 centimeters length it has. Up to 20 centimeters length. Moreover, in male, urethra is urinogenital duct. That is urinogenital duct. That means, so urinogenital duct is a combined duct for both urine and sperm. Urine and sperm. That means urethra connect to the reproductive duct in the male. Both sperm and urine passes through this urethra. But in female, only urine passes out. And with 4 centimeters length it has. Okay, next process. How the micturition takes place. Micturition means passing out urine. How this takes place? What triggers this activity? So whenever the bladder fills up to 300 ml with urine, the walls are expands due to the relaxation of muscles. Okay, this expansion of muscles trigger the nerve endings which are connected to the urinary muscles of urinary bladder. Understand? Nerve endings are connected to the muscles. So this relaxation of muscles stimulate the nerves. The information reach the brain through the nerves. Immediately, brain sends the signals to the sphincter muscles present between urethra and urinary bladder. So automatically the sphincter muscles open and urine passes out. But here there is a difference in adult and child. Child means infant babies. In adult, both in adult the upper set of sphincter muscles are involuntary and the lower set is voluntary. Involuntary means that activity is not in our brain control. Voluntary means we can control that, right? See, we can fold our hands with our wish. Can we control the heartbeat? No. Can we control the stomach movements? No, because they are involuntary. Okay, here the upper one is involuntary, lower one is voluntary in adult. That's why whenever the upper sphincter opens through the reflex action, we can control the micturition through the lower sphincter muscle. That means we can retain the urine in the bladder up to 800 ml. Actually, when fill up 300 ml, upper sphincter opens, but we can retain the urine up to 800 ml because lower muscle is voluntary. But in infants, what happens? Why do they do the bedwet? Because both sets are involuntary. So automatically both sphincters opens in the infants. When they are growing, they gradually learn. That means lower muscle, sphincter muscle becomes voluntary when they are growing. So usually per day 1.6 to 1.8 liters urine is produced. It's based on the amount of water you take and type of food you take. If you take water-rich foods, the amount of urine increases. Moreover, it's based on the season also. Why do we produce more urine in the winter season? In winter, frequently we go for urine. What is the reason? Why? Because in winter, the body temperature increases to keep our body warm. The temperature changes the blood pressure. To regulate the blood pressure, the excess water will be removed from body. Understand? The excess removal of water in winter control the blood pressure. So till now you have learned about the role of kidneys in the filtration of blood. So what happens if the kidneys are failed? You might have seen a kidney failure patients in our surroundings, right? There are several reasons for this kidney failure. Mostly high blood pressure. If a person has high blood pressure for a long time, it damages the kidneys. That means it damages the glomerulus. Glomerulus lose the ability of filtration. Not only high blood pressure, high sugar also. That means diabetes also. Infections also. Frequent infections. High fever. Accidents. Due to all these causes, kidney failure takes place. Nowadays, the kidney failure are increasing because of our lifestyle. Okay, due to our lifestyle, our blood pressure and diabetes cases are increasing. That's why kidney failure cases also increasing. So, what is the remedy? If the kidneys will not function, what will happen? Our blood will fill up with excess water, right? And excess nitrogenous waste. If the body fill up with excess water, there is a swelling in the hands and legs. You might have observed. In kidney patients, the legs and hands will swelling because of excess water. And the blood fill up with nitrogenous waste. That means urea, uric acid and creatinine. These are all accumulated in the blood. And that condition of accumulation of nitrogenous waste in the blood is called uremia. uremia. So we cannot survive if it continues for a long time. What is the solution? Nowadays, due to development of technology in biology or medicine, various alternatives exist. Those are dialysis. One is dialysis. If the kidney disease is in primary condition, you can use the dialysis process. If the kidneys are completely damaged, you should go for another process, that is kidney transplantation. Kidney transplantation. The condition of complete damage of kidney is called end-stage renal disease, ESRD. End-stage renal disease. Complete failure of the kidneys. So the kidney failure in the beginning, you can go for dialysis process. What is that? Dialysis process. That means filtration of blood through artificial kidney. Have you seen the dialysis machine in hospitals? For kidney patients, the blood is taken out from body and it is purified in a machine. That is a dialysis machine. In dialysis process, two types are there. One is hemodialysis and the second one peritoneal dialysis. Peritoneal dialysis takes place at the stomach region. Here we have to discuss. Let's discuss about hemodialysis process. Hemodialysis. Okay, to do this hemodialysis, first of all, a fissure is created in the hand region. Small pipes are connected to the veins and artery. Okay. The fissure is called stent. First, doctors create the stent in the hands. So after the fixation of stent, the blood is taken out from the artery, main artery. From artery, the blood pumped into the dialysis machine. This is a dialysis machine. Here you have to learn about dialysis machine. The dialysis machine consists of tubes. These tubes act as semi-permeable membrane. Semi-permeable membrane. How the renal tubules and peritubular network act as semi-permeable membrane. Here these tubes act as semi-permeable membrane. And this machine is filled up with the fluid that is called dialyzing fluid. Dialyzing fluid. And this machine is called dialyzer. Dialyzer. Understand? The machine is filled with dialyzing fluid. The dialyzing fluid is a pump. Pump into the machine. That's here. The dialysis fluid is pumped into the machine. It is pumped by using the compressed air. So what happens? The blood is pumped into the dialyzer machine, and the blood flows through the pipes. Before pumping the blood into the machine, anticoagulant is mixed with the blood. Anticoagulant helps to prevent the coagulation of blood or clotting of blood. What is anticoagulant? Heparin. What is the name of anticoagulant? Heparin. In our blood also heparin is there. The heparin prevents the auto clotting of the blood. So before pumping the blood into the dialysis machine, heparin is mixed. Now what happens? What happens when the blood is flowing through the tubes? The nitrogenous waste is separated. Here dialysis fluid is equal to the plasma of the blood. Difference is the dialysis fluid do not have the nitrogenous waste. The blood has the nitrogenous waste. So there is a difference in the concentration. Due to this concentration difference, The nitrogenous waste present in the blood removed and enter the dialysis fluid. Immediately that fluid is separated from the machine. Again the fresh fluid is pumped. It's a continuous process. Okay? The fresh fluid is pumped. The waste fluid is taken from the machine. To complete one dialysis process, it takes 3 to 6 hours based on the condition of the kidneys. This process prolongs the life of the patient for several years. But it is expensive process. In major cities only the dialysis is available nowadays, even in government hospitals and private hospitals. Government providing the free dialysis and Aarogyasri program. In private hospitals they take 3 to 4,000 for one dialysis. Moreover, the patient should use costly medicines also. So what happens if the kidney is completely failure? As I said, kidney transplantation is one technique. Kidney transplantation. Have you listened this? For kidney transplantation, there should be a donor. Here the patient is called recipient, and the person who donates kidney is called donor. But all type of donors cannot match to the recipient. The donor should be close relative. That means blood relative. Why? Because the new kidney should match to the recipient genetically. Otherwise, the immune system do not accept the new kidney. Okay, the donated kidney is not matched to the recipient. The recipient immune system do not accept this, and the surgery will not be success. So first of all, the blood group should match, and the donated kidney should match to the recipient person. That's why the government is encouraging the organ donation from brain dead people. Brain dead. So we have to bring the awareness in the organ donation. Not only kidneys, eyes, heart, liver, several organs we can donate from very brain dead people. We prepare some slogans on the organ donation. Okay? Prepare some slogans. Okay, how this transplantation takes place? It's a very expensive surgery. It is. In this process, the damaged kidneys are not removed. Damaged kidneys do not remove. Usually, kidneys are located either side of the backbone. In the kidney transplantation, the new kidney is fixed below the abdomen, just above the legs, in the pelvic region. The new kidney is fixed. Okay, when the doctors separate the kidney from donor, they separate the kidney along with the ureter and the blood vessels, both renal artery and renal vein. So what they do, they connect the blood vessels of donor kidney to the recipient blood vessels. You see here, you can see here. These are the blood vessels of donor kidney. These are connected to the blood vessels of recipient. And this is the ureter of donated kidney. The ureter connected to the urinary bladder of the recipient. So at any place they can fix this new kidney, mostly below the abdomen. It's a very expensive process. But due to nowadays success rate is increased. Even after transplantation, the patient should take the medicines for lifelong. Okay, kidneys are the vital organs or main organs in our body in blood filtration. Along with the kidneys, there are some other organs also involved there, which are called accessory excretory organs. Accessory organs. Those are skin, liver, lungs, large intestine. So they also involve in separation of waste from the body. For example, lungs. What do lungs remove from body? What do lungs remove from body? Carbon dioxide. It remove the carbon dioxide and excess water. Skin. What do skin remove from body? Yeah, sweat, right? In the form of sweat, it remove the excess salts and excess water from the blood. If you observe the section of the skin, here you can see the sweat glands and another one oil glands or sebaceous glands. The sweat glands remove some excess ions and salts and water. The sebaceous glands remove the waxes, excess waxes, and some other ions. Sebaceous glands. They remove the waxes and other ions in the form of sebum. So in some of you, in adolescents, in teenagers, some of you get pimples on the face. Okay, that is because of the activity of the sebaceous glands. Next, liver also. Liver also remove the waste. You know, in the blood, red blood cells are there, RBC. Why do they are in red color? Why do RBC in red color? Yeah, hemoglobin. Hemoglobin. What is the lifespan of RBC? What is the lifespan of red blood cells? How many days they survive? Yeah, 120 days. So what happens after 120 days? They carry to the liver. In the liver, the dead RBC is removed. In that process, hemoglobin is broken down. In the destruction of hemoglobin, several pigments are produced. Those are bilirubin, bilirubin, and urochrome. Usually, urine is a slightly yellowish color. Urine. That is because of this urochrome, which produced in the liver. So urochrome removed out through the urine. What about bilirubin and biliverdin? Bilirubin and biliverdin enters the duodenum through the duct, bile duct. Actually, there is a use of the bilirubin and biliverdin. They involve in emulsification process. That means digestion of the fats. So after that, these pigments also removed through the feces. So in the liver, other waste also produced. Well, because in the liver, amino acid destruction takes place. Amino acid destruction. In that, urea is produced. The liver also involved in detoxification process. That means whenever you take any drugs, that means tablets, injections, and other medicines, they are called drugs. So some are poisonous. They reach the liver, and the liver do the detoxification process. In that process also, some waste materials are produced. So along with the urea, the excess drugs, steroids, all these are removed from the body. Okay. So like that, the liver involves in the removal of the some pigments, urochrome, urea, and excess drugs and steroids. The liver removes. Okay, another accessory organ is the large intestine. In large intestine, the colon part involved in excretion of some excess salts from the blood. The colon walls are lined with epithelial cells. Those epithelial cells remove the excess salts like calcium, magnesium, and iron from the blood. So those salts removed out through the feces. In such a process, these accessory organs also involved in the removal of the several nitrogenous waste, salts, excess drugs, steroids, oils like waxes from sebaceous glands. So this is about excretion in animals. In next topic you learn about excretion process in plants.